right? If you were to ask a question out there, where do you go to feed your digital curiosity? You'd probably also hear a variety of answers, right? From things like LinkedIn to YouTube feeds to Instagram, TikTok, anything that is feed generated, right? So what we're seeing is the ability to search and find what you want to learn is now a new learning habit. And the ability and the capability to be served content that is interesting and relevant to you, that's personalized to you based upon your context, I guess are two new habits over the last 10 years that are impacting us on a personal level that we're now starting to see that come into the corporate world. I think if you look at some of the facts about modern learners, so 142 minutes a day on social media, that's a lot, 2.5 hours odd. Most people would say that we're learning from YouTube. In fact, 86% of people say they learn on YouTube. So then undoubtedly we're valuing user-generated content. Our brains process video 60,000 times faster. Imagine all the visual input this screen has given you and how much you're processing that versus if it was all just written for you to go through. So if we take that then to say, what does that mean for our learners? They're on demand. They're saturated with the amount of content that's now available to them and that was maybe not there 10 or 20 years ago. They value user-generated content. We can see that from the YouTube stats. We want to learn at our own pace, and obviously we want to create personalized content because there is such a massive demand of content out there. If I look at most corporates, though, most corporates are still delivering, despite the fact that we've now got some of these amazing technologies out there, they're still kind of using the course as the main way to learn, right? So in essence saying, whatever the answer to the problem is, we're going to put people through a formal training course and hope they retain all the knowledge we're going to throw at them, even though what we're saying is we use Google, YouTube, LinkedIn, ChatGPT now. And the companies that are doing that are maybe taking a more hybrid approach to learning, still using courses, still recognizing that courses are important for foundational learning, but utilizing technologies that are AI driven to allow people to accelerate to performance far quicker, far faster. So if we now start to introduce some of these technologies and what they are and how they're starting to come through and becoming mainstream in terms of corporate learning. So this is a little bit to explain our platform, but also to explain kind of what happens to make technology AI ready. So in our example, our technology is AI ready, allowing this stuff to happen on the right-hand side. So the ability to create personalized feeds like Flipboard, the ability to match a skill to content, Google style questions and answers, or even ChatGPT style conversation. So that's the stuff that we're moving to. To get to that though, so what happens in the background and what happens on the web and what happening in now technologies like ours is we're making the environment AI friendly. So the way that happens is, for example, in our technology, I'm sure many others out there, what would happen is if a video goes into the platform, that the audio would be automatically transcribed into text. All of the text inside a file, a video or an article is also extracted. So in essence, we're extracting everything to make it text. Because in order to apply all this really cool AI stuff on the right-hand side, everything's got to be in a raw text-based format before we start the enrichment process to do stuff with it. So the enrichment process may be things like translating it automatically into multiple languages. It could be automatically adding tags to that content because we understand it. So if Chris updates a bit of content but doesn't tag it, we'll transcribe it, auto-tag it, understand it, and get it ready so that some of this really cool, smart AI can start to do really smart and intelligent things with it. And then what we'll cover off now is, now that we've created this, in essence, this corporate brain, the digitized knowledge of an organization, we can start to think about how do we do some of this stuff? How do we create personalized feeds? How do we match skills gaps to content? How do we allow instant answers to questions? How do we summarize meetings? Back in this meeting, I don't want to watch the whole thing, but maybe tell me what the meeting was about, tell me what the webinar was about in 100 words. And maybe even having that conversation with our corporate brain or experts in our company in an AI format. So to go through these kind of examples one at a time, just to make sure that first bit's landed. The first bit is the AI, there's a suite of AI makes the corporate brain, and then now what we have is basically an interface into the world of AI technologies. And it's probably a couple of thousand different AI technologies that can be plugged into this type of corporate brain. And the real exciting innovation today is, what do you plug in to solve what problem? So which technologies can enhance what we do, make it more productive, and which ones can solve problems that previously we thought were unsolvable. So one example of that, a more simple place to start with. If customers or organizations have multiple libraries, they might have a library for LinkedIn, for Udemy, a corporate learning management system, external websites. But when somebody wants to type, wants to find, okay, I need to remind myself on the stuff I learned around 3 types of coaching conversation, they can just type in that one term and it will automatically in the search, as you do in Google, say, actually the best video is inside a LinkedIn learning course that's inside index from the platform, and I'm going to choose that platform, that course, and point you to that video. So in essence, making all that content YouTube-like, which is back to that kind of 86% way that people are choosing to learn. So not the only way, but one of those things, right? So enabling all our content to be more YouTube-like, in that accessible, what I want to learn, give me that concept, give me that procedure in a visual way for those that are visual. If we look at the second technology now that we've indexed all the text, and this is an example of one of our platforms for the European Union that has 500,000 documents, which is made up of 5 million paragraphs. So in essence, that when a complex question is asked, such as when did the DEA stop manufacturing ethylene byproducts, that's a pretty complicated question. And although there's 5 million paragraphs in that data, it's able to come back and say the answer is early 2001. That's the most accurate answer that it's going to find. To do that, obviously, we now know that all the text is in the brain. Natural language, this is what we call natural language AI. So natural language AI understands, first of all, that's a question, because it's using when, and natural language understands that. And then also it understands language in this 300-dimensional model, right? So basically, Google's language, ChatGPT and others, basically the English language and other languages are modeled into multiple dimensions. So the word, let's say, brother is close to the word sister. That's a long way away from the word fire truck, right? So the whole language, if you like, is connected to every other word, and the distance from every other word it has a number and a vector that's close towards that, right? So basically, English language and every language is modeled in this 3 dimensions. It's actually a 300-dimensional model that comes through that, and that's why this complex question where it says stop manufacturing, it understands that stop manufacturing is similar to until early 2001, that derivatives of production is similar to byproducts. And therefore, of the 5 million paragraph, it's therefore said, well, actually, therefore, I only extract that answer to be not 2001, not the month, but actually that's the most accurate answer I've got on the knowledge bank that's available to us. So that's a great example of both the data being indexed and natural language understanding both the content, but also understanding the actual question in depth as well. And natural language will more and more become how we start to interface, I believe, with all of our learning and all of our knowledge. So if we take the next example, so what that means now is what we're now starting to see is, because companies like ours and others can literally take Google's technology, in this case, Google's technology is actually open. So we can take that open source AI and embed it into a platform like ours and have the same experience for the learner. So somebody types in on the public web, when was the Phil Collins versus INRAD decision? And the answer comes back 20th October 1993, exactly the same, because if the same document exists on the private corporate as a public place, it's just showing you'll get exactly the same answer, because we're using exactly the same level of AI now. That becomes obviously really interesting, right? Because historically, because it's not easy to give instant answers to people, most learning and most corporate learning is trying to brain stuff people. So it's trying to say, there is no way to really give you an accurate information. So we're going to try to throw every bit of information we can at you with the hope you're going to retain it all. And most of the time, we know that's not going to happen. And people normally forget most of the stuff. And then they ask the person nearby, how do I help? Or a chat group. And then it's Russian roulette whether that person is getting accurate information. And that's why a lot of the time it takes people a lot longer to get up to speed in an effective best practice type way. So just showing this, it's a good example of just showing how we're now starting to be able to use consumer AI inside our corporate products. And to that example, if we take a real practical example of that, as we're in London, or some of you guys are in London, if you take the example of the black taxi driver versus the Uber driver. So the black taxi driver still today has to memorize 3 to 4 years of their lives, driving around London or virtually around London, trying to retain every street address towards that. Versus an Uber driver, because Google has obviously indexed all the streets out there, but they have the AI then to say, I understand the knowledge and understand, therefore, if you want to go from A to B, I can tell you, like a digital coach, go left or go left. It means that an Uber driver is from the day of application is earning money within 10 days. So that's the use, and the fact that I don't have to memorize everything, and I've got a more accurate piece of information than if I had to use a map. That's 100 times faster they're getting into learning, which obviously means you look at the black taxi company that hasn't really moved out of London versus Uber, that's a global organization in a couple of years worth $40 billion and in every city in the world, maybe. Or a company like Uber, if it's not Uber themselves, whether that's Lyft or Gojek or wherever you happen to be in the world. But everyone, all those local companies using exactly the same technique versus in London, we're still getting them to remember every street place for 4 years, which isn't so great for the family, who's obviously they've got to be away from them, versus these guys are only money straight for the family. So it's the same concept of, if we can make great and accurate information available to people, how much do we brain stuff? And this is a good practical application of what many organizations now do. So instead of delivering, for example, onboarding, which might be 3 weeks of onboard, 3 weeks of push training, they're now saying, well, actually, instead of trying to brain stuff for you and hope you retain it all, and know you're probably not going to, we're going to reduce the amount of upfront knowledge to maybe 30% of what it happened to be, but we're going to make sure you have access to the most accurate answer from the best people, because we're going to help codify the best people and provide the best knowledge within a short period of time. And when the companies measure that, they can actually see within 6 weeks the performance of the people by training them less but learning more is actually delivering. This is 84 points net promoter score, so for a retailer, versus the old traditional way of brain stuffing, the black taxi driver model, which is a 12-point NPS score. Normally, this method takes 9 months to get people to just less. So the model that now people are using to get in 6 weeks. In essence, because if you're codifying the best people in the organization, then obviously the exciting piece there is you are getting everyone not just up to speed, but also comfortable and confident in their jobs, which we'll come on to next. So then I'll look at other bits of AI that are now being used. So, for example, there are really cool AI platforms like Skyhive that basically automatically mapped all the skills and the roles of the world. And then when they connect to us, for example, they will say, well, this person is only a 5.7 in this particular skills gap. So therefore, because we understand all the content, we'll automatically map courses, micro content knowledge to them based upon that skills gap. So people have the potential to close their skills gap and learn or at least their knowledge gap, and learn at the speed of their potential. If we go through, so what does that look like? So this is just an example of, let's say, screens. It shows how some of this technology comes together in a slightly different world. So if we think about how that technology is being applied, so we're using search as a problem-solving tool. I don't know how to do something, but because the corporate brain has been created, I can do that Google-like search or a ChatGPT style search and get access to that instant answer. I get feeds because the content's been automatically understood. It allows me to automatically create recommendations, either based on what my peers are looking at, or potentially what people topics of interest around my job. So keeping up to date on the latest knowledge, the latest standard operating procedures, the latest info that goes through that, as well as obviously still providing that foundational knowledge that allows me to get started. So courses are great for foundational knowledge, feeds are great to stay up to date, and obviously search is great as a problem-solving tool. If we look at other ways of AI that are now being used, very exciting is removing the barrier of language and learning. So again, in technologies like ours, I'm sure some others as well, if you put a video into us, we'll auto-transcribe it and then have the ability to auto-translate. So this is showing that, first of all, auto-transcription from 50 different languages is now possible. So that's now native in many products, including ours. So you automatically get those subtitles, right? So I get the native language subtitle, and then with one click of a button, I can then make that into French or German or Spanish. So people are able to learn from everybody else in an automated way. So we've done a lot of stuff around this where we're now well, we've had it, I guess, on our philanthropic side, we've digitized about 1,000 videos covering maths and sciences for the school education system. So we have about 10 million kids a year that freely go through our YouTube channel on our social side, learning about that. And then what we've then done is made subtitles for that. But then what we've also done last year is we actually went, instead of just creating subtitles, we used AI to actually create native voice. So the cost of us moving voiced into Ukrainian would have been quite costly to do all the human translations, edit it, cut it, and put it in there. But now the ability to go from English audio, press a button, it gets to the AI puts that into text, press a button again. And actually, we did a little bit of editing to go from 95% accurate to 100% accurate. Then press a button to get to Ukrainian text. Again, spend about 5 minutes to make sure it's perfect. And then press another button to go from Ukrainian text into Ukrainian voice, so that then all the children that want to learn these subjects and stuff can do, but in mother tongue, which is a much more effective way than through subtitles. So again, another great use of AI to break down barriers and maybe solve a problem that's previously unsolvable. How do we allow everyone to learn in mother tongue in a way that's far more effective, but in a cost-effective way? Then the interesting thing then says, well, you got all this amazing technology, but does it make a difference, right? Does it make a difference to an organization? So again, in the old world of learning, we would think about, if people went through a course, does that improve business value? That's now moved on because of the fact that now we're learning through multiple learning moments, as we talked about through here, right? We're now learning through search and finding answers. We're learning through little feeds. We're still doing foundational courses through conversations, and each of those interactions has value. So how do you measure that value? So with our clients, we have a consistent method that we do, which is basically saying we measure the people that return and have a digital interaction over a period of time, per week or per month. Do those people perform differently to the people that don't do that are just learning in maybe only one-dimensional way or not learning at all? So what we see consistently on data is the people that have the habits of learning, not necessarily consuming big courses, because actually when we did the analysis, the size of content consumed didn't make a difference. The thing that made the difference was frequency to be a continuous learner. So it was the frequency, not the size of consumption, that made the difference towards it. And that's we see across 10 different case studies. And it's, in essence, what we're doing, what we're trying to do is use the technology to break down the habits to create the habit of being a continuous learner. So, and if you look at every social media site, from Instagram to YouTube to all of these, they would all measure success of their platform by people choosing to return frequently. So they measure daily active usage, weekly active usage, monthly active usage. So the same measurement of how many people have you created as to these clients over here are now focused on how many people have we created the habits of learning rather than how many people have we put through a course. They still need to do the compliance stuff, but outside of compliance, it's the habit building stuff they're focused on. And when they measure the value of that, and they say, well, what's the value of that? Normally it's in 3 ways. One is, as the previous slide talks about, it's in a team-based KPI. So is that call center delivering a better KPI? Is the sales team delivering more revenue? So it's a team-based KPI. The second thing is, for a new inductee, normally we're measuring the people are getting there 300% faster. So are we able to onboard people and get them to competency 300% faster? And generally then what we see as well is an increase in retention satisfaction around 20%. And that seems to be a consistent number. And that generally, I guess the hypothesis on that is, if people are doing better in their role, they're up to speed faster, then they're more confident. And they're more confident in their job, more comfortable in their job, they're more likely to stay at the organization. So that's why we believe there seems to be a consistency between increasing performance and actually retention with inside roles. And then we are now starting to say, well, if it's the habit of learning that's key, then engagement measurement is key. So how do we start to understand when and why do people drop out? So again, when we look at that, we see there are different points people drop out. So it could be they never get to the platform in the first place. So that's a different issue around marketing. It could be they've come to the platform, but they haven't actually done stuff. So maybe the actual experience wasn't engaging enough or enticing enough to bring them in. But they've come, but they haven't come back. The experience wasn't great. So each of these places, and they're not just overall, but you look at it per region, per division, then overall, you start to see a pattern of where do I need to create an interaction? Do I need to create more interesting content? Do I need to make a more interesting site? Do I need to market to it differently? So the data, if you like, allows us to decide our interaction in an insightful way. And that's kind of what, for example, here, this might be a dealership for a car dealership. And they're looking at it saying, well, overall, you've got some higher engagement this week on that one, but lower over here. Or so let's say over here, 73%, but 4% over here. So exactly the same organization, exactly the same content, exactly the same job, but there's probably a line management issue here. Maybe the line manager is not buying into it. Whereas over here, they're obviously doing something right. So what can we go and learn from that person to apply over here? And if we go back maybe to this bit, this is when we talk about engagement, there are lots of things that organizations do to create that engagement. Technology and AI is like let's say an enabler, is a hygiene factor. But then things like the content strategy, the content is all big books. It's just long form content. You're probably not going to get people to want to come back on a frequent basis, right? The habit of coming back frequently is also going to be about the fact that the content's changing and it's bite-sized, as well as the long form stuff. Is the experience design a one-off thing, or is it, including things like social activities that are interacting with other people to come back, and are they using data to learn and adapt to understand what works and what doesn't work?